Hello everyone. Hello Novi Sad. We are super happy to be here. Thank you for welcoming us here in this beautiful city. It's really a blast so far with the conference. So I'm Stephane Rodet. I work at IBM, especially I work in a design organization of cloud, data, and AI. We work on all kind of products. We do, of course, the IBM cloud. We work on Watson products. We work on databases. So many kinds of things that has to do with cloud and AI in general. So in this talk, this will be, I will give you an overview of what we did over the last 2 years, our journey converting a WordPress website to a Vue.js apps that get bigger and bigger and bigger. So we came to a good size with interesting use cases and interesting things to report. So we'll have a look at that. We'll also have a look at how we transfer WordPress from a PHP interface to a headless CMS. So is Vue.js ready for the enterprise? Tough question. So spoiler, it is. We're using it more and more at IBM, and so I'll show you why we think that this is something that is ready for many enterprise use cases. So let's have a look. This is our project. So this is what we call the hybrid cloud design website. This is actually an intranet website, so it's just internal. And it was ordered by our vice president, Aaron Baumik, and he stated in those terms, this internal IBM hybrid cloud design website was designed and built by the IBM hybrid cloud designers to bring focus on our design work, educate our stakeholders about our design practice, and display the impact and benefits that design can bring to the overall success of products and offering. So it had many goals. We had the goals of synchronizing the designer between themselves, so providing a tool that they would like to use to get in touch and know what the other are doing, because we are quite a large organization. We are split it worldwide in many locations around the globe. So this had this first goal, and the second goal was also to show the internal stakeholders, the developers, the VPs, what we were doing and what is our craft, and also where is their project, what is happening with their project, is it ready to ship, when is it going to ship, are we some clients on board with that, and such questions. So when we first started around 2015 with the WordPress itself, we were only around 50 designers. So this was an obvious solution for us to get a quick thing working. And we started using the custom types for having different kind of objects. So for example, for the project, for the news, for the research work. And then inside those custom types, we used the advanced custom fields for providing prepared form for designers and stakeholders to input their information super easily. So with the advanced custom field, you can really easily get tables, drop down, radio button, and everything you need. So it's really not a blog tool anymore. It's really a full-blown form modeling tool. So around 2017, we started growing and growing. So what happens is that we merge with other organization, basically taking them with us and also keeping using our tools with that. And that meant other organizations brought their own processes, their own way of working. So we had to adapt some things on the website. And we also wanted to, well, we had to scale up the website, obviously, and the PHP was not working anymore super good. Actually, mainly because of skills, because many of our people in the design organization are more HTML, CSS specialists with skills in JavaScript, but PHP was less skills that everyone brought. And we also wanted to send a signal. So send a signal that it's good to have micro interaction and animation in enterprise products, so make our product more attractive, more interesting to day-to-day users. And so we had to make a real statement, a showcase with that. So what we would do is redesign the front end, but keep the admin interface the way it was. So this is what our designer came up with. Yeah. And so we got this was the whole design files that we got. And so as you can see, quite a bit of stuff on there. So after looking a bit at it, we realized we'd have to write tons of code for the animations. We need to build a proper design system to be consistent on the whole website and build all those pages. So there will be a lot more code moving around every day. So we couldn't use FTP anymore to a single virtual machine. We really had to have a more modern and scalable way of working. So let's have a quick look at the content of this website. What do we do on this right now? So this is a quick overview, a part of the functionality. We do project management, so, well, not really management, but we publish and show the project, so you can have a look at what is being worked on, and you can view in what phase the project is, and is there some research activity that's interesting, especially good if you, for example, you're making some offering that's very similar to another one and you want to know what user research they already did. It's very useful. We have also all kind of research artifacts, like our personas are documented. We have design resources like style guides, and we have voice and tone, for example. Now we have stuff that goes into the area of machine learning as well. So all kind of resource that's important for designers in their day-to-day work. I'll give some more reference on that later on. And finally, some team news. So at the beginning, it was a lot of internal posting, and it moved to be much more of a show of what we publish on Medium mainly. So let's get back to the topic actually. What is enterprise actually? So according to some website on the internet, enterprise IT, also known as enterprise class IT, is hardware and software designed to meet the demands of a large organization. In comparison to consumer and small companies, an enterprise are greater requirement for availability, compatibility, reliability, scalability, performance, and security, among other things. So you might probably not agree completely with that definition. Personally, I integrated this into this presentation because this has been the way it's been understood by the enterprise folks for a long time, which means especially what you have at the bottom, these all requirements. I think you probably know it from your job. You know, the checklist approach to fill all the points on a requirement list is very often in the process something important. So that's why I give it a look at this one. And but of course, everyone knows that at least some consumer organization right now have also huge scalability and reliability, etc. requirement. But so let's look at how Vue stacks against this. So this is my own reading grid of that, of the special aspects that I think are important when you look at especially front-end frameworks. So there might probably be a few of those that I miss over here, but first list. So stability. We've been super happy with the stability of Vue.js so far. We've been using it since 2017. And we catch it up after the 2.0 change. And so since then, it's never broken on us. So this was really a good point for Vue.js. And we've got some other points that were not as easy to manage. For example, on the Webpack side, we had to keep up with some evolution of the APIs and so on. And sometimes, you know, bits of scratching in to understand what is going on. I think right now the Vue CLI solves a lot of those Webpack side problems. So we're really happy with the stability so far. Documentation is really nice. Maybe it comes from the fact that Vue.js comes partly from a design background, that the people who contribute to Vue.js are also quite design-minded, and so think a lot about how the user will get this. And I think that's actually a big reason why the framework has been so successful, because it made such a great work at being approachable and easy to start with and to find how it works. MIT license, so what should I say about this? For us as a company, this is super reassuring, and we love the way that it's maintained by a community. The community has been super nice to us so far. So I remember once I had found something that has changed in Webpack in the way of you would do code splitting. And I wrote a small PR to change on the documentation, a single line of comment. And the day after, Ivan Yu took the whole PR and rewrote basically the whole page to the way that is now the preferred approach. So I was really surprised by that. The performance is for us definitely good enough. I think it's in the low bench of the UI framework so far. There are some that are even smaller, even more compact. So make your own decision. In our case, performance of the framework itself was never an issue. What was an issue was how we deal with loading different parts of the UI in the right time. How can we optimize our API with WordPress, caching, and so on to make it fast enough? Networking was a topic. We had the whole SVG animation was a topic, but definitely Vue.js in itself was not a topic in the discussion. And so on the learning curve, well, everyone is super fast to get productive with that. So if you have React or Angular developers, they are in a matter of days productive with our code base. And if you take vanilla JavaScript developers, they also learn it pretty quickly. So it's been really good from that side. I don't want to do any comparison with React, Angular, and so on. There's been enough documentation about those. I think this can be also a difficult talk to have, and I don't think this is the way it should be presented. But there has been an outstanding post around why Vue.js is getting more traction every month by Monterrey. So if you are looking for more details, you can definitely check this out. For us, the simple summary is it just works. It's invisible, and it's not a topic of discussion in our meeting. This is something that works. We're super happy with that. And so it allows us to bring the discussion at the next level, which is that user experience should be the next frontier in enterprise. So not only those aspects that we see, scalability, reliability, and so on is nice, but actually, what if your user cannot use your stuff because it's just too complicated, or the buttons are placed in a place that no one understands it? So it's really the big aspect to approach. Like, how can you make your product work together well for the users and be nice to use? This is really the billion-dollar question right now. So let's get back to the technical aspect. So let's start with WordPress and how we decoupled it first. So we wanted to keep the editing experience because it worked well for us, I must say, and we had already most of the code base ready. And yeah, with the overall data management, also with advanced custom field and custom type, it was really great. So we pretty soon focused around moving to a cloud model because we had before WordPress just on a single VM. And we wanted to decouple the front end. So everything was presentation, JavaScript, and so on from the backend. And we were guided by the concept of headless CMS for that. So Wikipedia defines it as such. A headless content management system, or headless CMS, is a backend-only content management system built from the ground up as a content repository that makes content accessible via a RESTful API for display on any device. So we didn't make it 100% this way because we still have, as I said, the admin side is still on WordPress, but everything which is actually end-user facing is on Vue.js and Node. So the interesting thing with that, we started from a whole different point of view, actually, with different needs, which was more about enabling our developers to be more productive with the front end and having option to have components and all that. But it also allows us then to work a bit more in, I would not say microservices, because this is also a loaded term, but really different services. So we can not only be more agile on the front end, we can also start connecting our front end to many other sources, many other services. And so that way we can stay much more in touch with what the designers are actually using. And if they start using another tools that has an API for us to consume, then we can go over there and integrate it much more easily in the website. So this is a very simplified way of how it works. I have another chart that showed the actual architecture, but I think this would really, this is a separate talk in itself. We have Vue together with a very small node server layer on Cloud Foundry, and WordPress had to be on Kubernetes in our case. WordPress and Cloud Foundry don't live super well together because WordPress is still saving media on the disk, and so you need to have a dedicated strategy around this. There were some plugins that do save actually the Cloud Foundry files into an object storage, but it was not working well for us. So it all works into the an internal version of the IBM Cloud. That's just for internal stuff. So the learning curve for Kubernetes is significantly steeper than for Cloud Foundry. So that's why we have the Node app on Cloud Foundry still. If you're not familiar yet with cloud concepts, and as a front-end developers, you want to go toward more cloud and you want to put some stuff on the cloud, then Cloud Foundry is definitely a good starting point because it provides you with good templates, and you can start writing your code as usual, and then you had configuration file and you do CF push, and it is deployed on the cloud. And you have also a super easy integration with continuous integration tools such as Travis CI. So the front end, let's go back to Vue now. So at the start, this was around the end of 2016, start of 2017. We had a look at different solutions. So we looked at Polymer, we looked at web components, we looked at React, we looked at Vue as well. Yeah, web component at that time had quite some issue around the heavy-handed polyfilling that was needed to make it work. React was not super adapted to the way we work, so it was really for a lot of our team a paradigm change completely to JavaScript, and we were used to do a lot of HTML and CSS for our prototyping work, and also components writing. And so Vue, the issue with Vue at that time is that it was just super new, and that we couldn't find really some proven examples. So actually writing some internal tool was a good bet because we thought we can give it a try and see, and if it doesn't work, then we'll switch. But we stay with it. So we really liked with Vue that it was following this, I would almost say markup first approach, although actually in the background it's not really like this, but when you code it, it really looks like it and it feels very familiar. So you can also do a lot of porting your old code base to Vue was really easy for us. So this is basically the structure we took for talking to WordPress. We created a Vue app from the template. We added Axios to it to make the calls to WordPress, and we were already kicking. So as you can see at the bottom, we were extracting the first post from WordPress, and so we were able to continue with that. So we're starting building the CSS and building the components and so on. And then we had a long time of churning and building components, including styles, adapting to the design that we had, and also finding out how should we actually make a scalable CSS work with Vue.js. So should we use BEM? Should we use scoped? Should we go another way? Should we have the CSS inside the component, outside the component? So here's an overview of what we have now. We base on BEM for most, well, actually for all our CSS code base follows BEM. First thing, we have the common styles are extracted. So everything which has to do with layout, typography, base things that are used by all the applications should be followed is on common style layer that's just in separate SCSS files. And then those common styles are all imported by the app at the top level. And then the page might have their own modifiers for the styles and their own styles as a whole. We use CSS everywhere. We use CSS, but we try to limit the amount of nesting we do. So we don't use much the ampersand sign actually, which is okay because when you're just inside a component and you have meaningful names, then it's all manageable. We still have some conflict sometimes though with class names. So still happens sometimes that someone doesn't see that a block name is already used somewhere else. So that had happened a few times, and we're currently in the way of mitigating this by having better convention. But so why did we use the scope CSS? Scope CSS is actually super nice from the developer experience, but as you see, it creates some additional attributes and make the selectors more complex, so it has a performance drawback. And we were so much invested into some complex markup at some points, especially with the animation, that we didn't want to go this road, and we wanted to keep the rendering as fast as possible. There are actually some resources on the internet that describe the impact of the scope attributes, so you can search for them. There is also the option of having CSS modules. I think this was really kind of disclosed or known a bit after we started, so we hadn't really the option to test it, but personally I think this is really appealing. Definitely have a look at this. For us, just the problem is that we would have to refactor our whole code base, and we didn't have the time to do this. But it's super nice because it actually generates completely random and unique class names. So it keeps the class name selector performance, but without risking any conflict with another component. So this is really super nice. So at the time we started, there is this template from the Vue CLI that was available. So you would just run the Vue template creation once, and then that was it basically. You would have all a starting Webpack configuration, but then you had no way to keep it updated. So you can still do MTM update, NPM, I can say this, but you'll have to know what you need to change in your Webpack configuration that's been generated from the original thing. So now, if you are starting a Vue project, I definitely recommend you to use this tool because it will keep all your configuration in plugins, and so you will just be able to update your dependencies, including the Webpack itself, through this tool. So that's really super nice and a great improvement. So we are actually looking to move to the Vue CLI as well, which is at version 3 now. It's just some kind of work that we have the backlog and need to tackle at some point. So I said a lot about how Vue is easy to go on with and that you're easily productive with that. There are a few caveats though. There are a few, you need to still have some JavaScript knowledge, and I think you here, if you come to a JavaScript conference, you certainly know everything what I'm speaking about, and this is base knowledge that you have. But when you have someone in your team that might not have this knowledge, you know, just check for it. So one of the things, for example, that we noticed is that at the start, developers tend to put all the code in a Vue.js app in components. And so they have a hard time thinking, oh, I could actually just do a JavaScript export, import, and then I have this common piece of code in a library. So this is actually as easy as that, but you have to know this. It took us a bit of time to have a proper state and data management in the app. So especially when you have different objects that interact with each other, or a single object is used on 2 pages and so on. So what happened for a long time, we had random exceptions when not enough data would come from the API. Then we would just stay on the loader for without data displayed in the page at all. And WordPress in the same case would just go over the item and just would not display one post or one user or whatever. but here it would just kill the whole page. And so a JavaScript single page application can be more fragile than a PHP app if you're looking to migrate. You just have to know that you have to take all kind of measures to keep your data, your app running well. So for example, what we now do is we initialize every kind of data with not available value, and so we are sure we have a baseline on the data that nothing will be missing on the page. And also we have everywhere checks, of course, for null values, undefined, etc. It happens sometimes that you forgot those, so of course you need good tests and so on, but sometimes in the urgency of building something, it slips a bit. So just be careful about this and think about it. This is an additional work that you have to do compared to, for example, PHP app. So you have to know how async processing works. It's not complicated, but you have to understand it, especially when you write your state in a component and so on, what happens. Pretty much basic work, but you know, the framework is just not, it doesn't abstract this away in this sense. Also on Vue, it's easy to learn again. Still be aware of the sometimes relatively small difference there are. You have to know the difference between computed and methods. You have to know the difference between what is a prop, what is data, what is a dispatch, what is a commit. Those are a few examples. So what about testing? So we went on a bit late with that because at the start there were not really a good tooling that would work fine with our continuous integration. So we would have to set up Selenium servers and so on a separate cloud and networking and so on. So it was just a lot of work for us that we didn't take at the start. But then we came back to this a bit more recently to find that there was a fantastic library called Vue Test Utils. And so it helps a lot with testing components. So as you can see, line 7, you have a so-called shallow mount, and the shallow mount is a super nice thing because it will only mount this one component without any children, which means you can test this component totally in isolation. And as you see, line 18 to 22, you can just set the children of these components as mocked up one tag element. You can also overwrite methods, so you can put stubs into them to know if they have been called. Maybe you want them to not be called in some condition or to be called a certain amount of time or not too much. And so the stub allows to monitor all that. That's really super nice. And as you see, a bit more than 20 lines of code to get everything started. This is really the full initialization here. And then the test itself is also very easy. Basically, once you have that so-called wrapper, you can call any event, you can call any methods on your component, and you can also check the data at any time to see if that's the way you expect it. And it will even handle the rendering cycle for you, which means it's not directly visible, but the wrapper will wait for the component to render in the virtual machine before checking the information. So animation now. So how do we handle that whole complexity? There are basically two ways we do animation on this website. We use GreenSock or CSS animations, depending on the context. And we animate either SVG or plain DOM elements. So be aware that GreenSock has a special license. If you sell the product that you write with GreenSock, you'll have to have a commercial license for it. So just be aware of that. Later on, my colleague Oleg Sabov will make a full presentation on animations with other means, so you'll learn about a whole kind of ways to do animation, this time not with Vue, with React. So let's look at the way we go when we have to animate something. So first we need some design. Obviously we get some SVGs from the designers. The designer also produced some kind of a film version of the animation. At least at the time we started this, we had no good tool for doing this, so we had to orient ourselves on the film. Right now, there are better tools to actually simulate animation. Then you have to extract all the inline CSS and put them into a separate CSS to be able to manage it, because else it's just so much stuff that comes into this. You also, at that point in time, also implement classes. So we stayed with PEM as well for the animation, because it really brought us a very strong structure that was needed for so much stuff. I will see you just later how much it was. And then once you have that SVG file ready, you sync it back to the designer. So when he imports it into, or he or she imports it in their tool, they can then send you back an updated version without you having to rewrite everything. On the animation, preferably you go with CSS if it's possible, given the context, but if else, you go with JavaScript animation. But beware of the performance-related aspect of that. And then test it on different browsers. We had especially a lot of things to deal with, the different differences in coordinates, and some weird bugs between Firefox and Chrome that wouldn't behave the same way. So this is a bit how it looks. You see tons of SVG and a lot of animated JavaScript with GreenSock. So how does it look like now? Let me give you a short preview of that. This is how we go through the main page and then show the projects that we have on the website. So this is the project headlight banner, as you see how that works. And then research, processing user information, so to say. Yeah, I know I would like the hand also to really pick it, but it was really too hard to do. So as you can see, there is quite some stuff into there. It adds up to a full minute of animation. So Vue.js worked great for us. You know, it's really super transparent. Our developers are productive with it. We're super happy, and we want to tell about it to contribute back a bit to the community. So one nice side effect, we got an award for that. We got an honorable mention from Fast Company, which is a super competitive design contest, actually. And so let's talk a bit about what would happen if we were to restart such a project in 2019. Right now, there are so many tools that actually provide a lot of what we did from scratch at the start. So there are so many tools that provide you a template for PWA, for connection to the backend with different tools. So let me present you a few of them. Viewfront is specialized in the area of CMS. It's a pretty new project. For us, it is a bit too narrow because it's still very oriented around articles and posts, comments, and so on, and has lots of templates for that. But if you are looking around a simple website that you have with WordPress and want to modernize it, this might be something you want to look at. If you have more advanced needs and want to connect to many more sources, then you might look into Gridsome, which is also a very new project but looks super promising. So now you would like to know more or talk with your team around starting with Vue.js. I've got a few tips for you to help you in this endeavor. So the State of Vue report has been set up for a couple of years already by the Vue team, and it's actually made by the Monterey company as also a kind of give back to the community. And it's full of case studies and statistics, also interview of Ivan Yu. There are lots of data that you can extract from there about Vue, where it is going, where it comes from, and a lot of material to speak with your team about Vue in a knowledgeable manner. So you'll find this on this URL, or just Google it. This is a super useful tool. So we were actually, this whole talk comes from the State of Vue report. And in in this one, we actually describe what I showed you for this whole talk, with one difference. At the end, I get asked, what is a blocker for more Vue adoption in our company at IBM? And so my answer to that was that the bigger obstacle was that we didn't have our component library ported to Vue at that time. And so this was a major problem for teams starting to use it quickly. So it's not something that's fixed, thanks to the effort of a colleague that was super dedicated and talented in doing this. So all our products at IBM follow our design system, which is derived from our design language. So our design system is called Carbon. It's completely open. So the website is carbondesignsystem.com. I truly advise you to give it a look. So Carbon is fully open source, and it started with vanilla and React version. And now we have port of it to Angular and, as of a few months, Vue. There is also a tutorial for React and Vue, so you can just go over this page and go through a guided tutorial that will show you in detail what code you should include where and how this works and how is the CSS organized and so on. So there is also Git repos for all of that, for the Vue version, but also for the React version, for the vanilla version, and so on. So with that in mind, let's build delightful enterprise app with Vue.js. Thank you all.
Okay, thank you, Stephane. So we will pinch a little bit of time to ask a couple of questions, and we have a lot of upvotes here. So first question, you already addressed it in some way, and it says, what is the advantage of Vue over Angular? And that being said, I would like to keep it maybe narrow to the context. Maybe did you ever consider Angular at some point, and maybe just one thing or maybe something like that about it?
Yeah, for us, we were really design-oriented, so we really focused on the way we could make our markup and our CSS worked easily. And from that point of view, Angular looked a bit too complex for us. This was also the time where there was a lot of doubt around Angular, because this was the, what was the Angular 1.5 transition or something like this, when you went from AngularJS to Angular.
Some bad version of Angular, yeah.
Yeah, and so there was this major refactoring happening. So yeah, that's a bit it to make it short.
Okay, fair enough. So next one, can we add new Vue component dynamically in runtime without rebuilding?
Well, you need to, you have your build standing, but your build can be composed of many chunks. So with Webpack, you can do code splitting super easily. It actually just means when you do your import for a given component, then you can just give it as a callback import, and then it will be loaded dynamically in your app. So it's quite easy, actually straightforward. It's well documented now. But you need to have it built before, and then you can load it dynamically, and of course with all the API data that comes with it. So we do a lot of dynamic loading on this website.
Okay, the last one, and the rest of the questions you can ask Stephane later. Are you happy with SEO? Do you have to use any additional library to achieve better results?
Am I happy with what, sorry?
SEO, search engine optimization.
Oh, yeah, so that's the point. We don't need that because we're an internal website, so we don't have that aspect covered at all. From what I know, when you have needs around SEO and you think it is useful to have proper markup generated, then there are lots of tools like Nux that actually generate the whole markup in the forefront. You can even control whenever you want to have some page already in the build as static, rendered page that you just deliver with your web server. Or if you just want your server node, for example, layer to generate the markup and deliver it as HTML to the page. So you have full control over that depending what tooling you take, yeah.
Okay, thank you. That would be all. Let's hear it for Stephane.
Thank you.